Hi, this is Everett from Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my classroom. Okay, we're here for another demonstration of a painting. I hope you're all safe out there and can enjoy what I'm going to do. I've got a different kind of painting today. I'm going to do a painting, and it's called negative painting is a techniques, but it's going to be a picture of a set of woods, a set of trees. I'm going to take you and show you how to build depth in that particular painting. So let's go to my painting board and let me get started. I'll show you a little bit what tools I'm going to use and how I'm going to get started on it. I'm going to take you over to the painting table now. Okay, here I'll start out with a sketch. Now it's a bunch of trees, and the trees of all different sizes, large, medium, and small. And then there's some background trees here in the background. Okay. And what I'm going to do is the techniques I'm going to use today is called negative painting, and I'm going to paint between the trees at different values, and then make some of the trees stand out. Another way of doing this kind of painting, well, I wouldn't do it, but another way of doing this painting would be to mask out some of these trees and then paint over. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to paint over and then put another layer on top of that. And I did a little preliminary color sketch here, and this is what I mean. I've got several trees here in the background and these two main trees in the foreground, and I'm going to put different layers of color and bring out those forward trees and make the back trees, or the ones in behind, make them recede into the background and give the painting a real deep feeling of a dark woods. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I took my sketch and I transferred it to a sheet of 140-pound Gemini watercolor paper. And this is a quarter sheet. It's measures about 15 by 12 inches wide. It's a pretty good sized painting. Okay, what I'm going to do is mix up some color here. And it's going to be a light value, my first layer. And let's say I got Quinacridone Violet here with a large brush. And then I've got Ultramarine Blue with a medium, with a 1/2-inch brush. I've also got some green number 2, and mixed in with a little bit of hooker's green. So that'll be a good light mix to start out with. And over here I'm going to start in this section on the left. And I'm going to turn the page so I can get the brush stroke going. I'm just going to put in a light background of color. Just to get started here. This will be mainly Quinacridone. I mixed in a little bit of ultramarine. I like to vary the colors. You don't want to have a solid single color. You want to vary that. Now coming up to this larger tree. Okay, now I'm going to change colors. I'm going to go into more of the blue. And let's see, I want to get continue that Quinacridone Violet, but Violet, continue that color here on that side. I'll pick up a little more blue now. I'm going to transition into blue color, and then I'll put this in rather quickly. And then this last section over here, I'm going to put in green, mixed in with a little bit of blue. So I'm varying the colors across the painting, going from a violet to a blue to a green, and a light value. Now I'm going to go over this with another layer, so right now I'm just getting in the blocking in the colors that I want. Okay. Okay, turn the book around. Yeah, that looks pretty good. That looks pretty nice. Okay. You can see the variety of color. A little bit of shine there on the paper. Let me when it's wet it shines out a little bit. See, maybe you can see a little better there. Okay. So I'm going to go back and mix a little darker mix of the same color. And take my time, because I want it to get a little bit drier. I can see a little bit of shine, so take my time. But while I'm doing that, I'll be mixing up a little darker. So I'll go a little darker values now, a little more pigment, a little darker ultramarine, and I think I'll just pick up another color with using Hooker's green over here. I won't need this round brush right away. Put that back. I may use the round brush for maybe some detail at the end. I'm not sure yet. I use the brush depending on what area I'm working on, how big of a space I'm working on, and so forth. Okay. All right. I think we're okay. I think we're okay. I want to go ahead and put some darker values over here now. This one's going to be a little bit darker. And I'm going to overlap that Quinacridone Violet with a little bit of ultramarine to give me a variety. Now I'm going to start defining some background trees in here. So I'm going to take that violet color and I'm going to go around some of these shapes I have drawn in here. And put a little limb across there, a little variety. And come down here. We'll pick up a little more of that blue, a little more blue. So what I'm doing is I'm painting around some of these shapes so that they stand out, and I'm making the background darker behind some of these shapes. So I'm painting negative shapes now. I'm painting negative. This is called negative shape, negative painting. That makes it's a very interesting way to paint. So you can put a dark background with some lighter values to show the shapes. I'll take this blue. There's a little bit of violet in here. Put that in there. Now I'll pick up a little darker ultramarine. And I think what I'll do is I'll come in here and this is ultramarine blue. I'm working on this. Went from the violet color into the blue color. A little bit of transition. And I'll paint around some of these shapes that are going to be a little more. The closer trees to the foreground or forward is going to be a little lighter, so the trees in the background will be much darker. So I'm putting enough value in there for it to show that front shape. This is a demonstration. If you were doing a painting this at home, you want to take your time on some of these shapes. I'm just going to go ahead and do it quickly because this is a demonstration to get the idea of how you would paint this way and show the effects. And I think the effects are very interesting. And I think what I'll do in the last color I put on here, I'm going to mix a little bit of green in because some of these colors now are getting a little bit too rich. But this will give me a dark color to use. Okay, then this last one. See, I can see I'm defining this. If you look at the shapes, I'm building the shapes of those trees and limbs and background. You can see them start to materialize. And there's the one up here. Okay. All right. Then the last one. Then the last one here, we'll put a little green now, a little darker green. Ooh, no, that's too greeny. So I'm going to put, when I say greeny, I mean it's really green. So I'm going to mix a little bit more blue with that to tone it down just slightly. But I do want a dark color. And that's mainly what I'm doing. I'm putting in a dark color. And I might leave some lighter values up here. I've got to vary the background. So I might leave some more tree trunk showing in there. They're not drawn in, but I'm making them up as I go. A little bit of variety, a little bit of change. So, and the brush strokes, they should be do them quickly, or don't dilly-dally too much. Just put them in, and the little rough edges are okay. This is the woods. We're painting the trees, so they can have a little bit of texture to them. And so painting it quickly doesn't matter. Let me put this one in. Let's see. Yeah, I'll leave that one light. So I'm trying to do some lights and darks so that the shapes stand out. And I'll come in here. And I'll wind up over here. I think I'll mix a little more blue in with that green. I'm putting the paint on very quickly. Just want to block it in. Okay. Now you can start to see the pattern now. Yeah, some of the colors I'm going to modify right now, but I want to get them dark enough so that they would start showing depth. I'm going to have to let that sit there and dry just a little bit more. I can go ahead and maybe work a little bit on the foreground here while the background is drying. So I can play. I got plenty of room up here, and I got a couple trees I also want to do some things with. So I can go ahead and I'm going to mix up some foreground color. I think I'm going to use a little bit of burnt sienna in the foreground. See, we're in the woods, and it's probably still winter time or early springtime, so there'll be a little bit of brown grass on the ground and so forth. So I'm going to drag that across very roughly to give me texture in the foreground. And notice I'm going to push the brush, pull the brush, twist the brush, because I just want to get a rough indication of ground down here. And I'm going to modify the color. I put a little bit more burnt sienna on the brush. And I think I'll come right up here a little bit further. Okay. As I get a little higher here, I think I'll lighten up the color just a little bit. Put a little bit of yellow ochre in there. So I made that a little bit lighter. Now once down there, I may take my the palette in the bottle, the dot sprayer with water in it, and just go ahead and what I do here now, I'm just going to put a little bit of little drops of water on this, and that'll make little blossoms. That also give texture in the foreground. Okay, and while that's drying, all right. Okay, that's getting dry over here now. I think I'll go back in and do some more work in the background. Before I do that, I can play with this big tree here. mix up a dark brown. Make sure I have a nice space here. I want a nice space here. Pick that brown up. Put a little bit of ultramarine blue, a little bit of burnt sienna, and a little more burnt sienna. Okay, nice dark brown. All right. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and put some texture on this tree here. This is going to be a dark tree. Everything else is going to be lighter. This is going to be my darkest tree. Now I'm dragging the brush down on the edges here. Again, this natural hair brush allows me to move with little skips and jumps because of the hair, and it gives me a rough texture is what I'm looking for. And let's see, on this side I'll make a lighter brown. And let me turn the painting. I'm going to turn upside down so I can work the other edge. And the other edge I'm going to do over here. And this will be a lighter brown over here. I'm dragging it. I'm using the edge of the brush, and I'm dragging it, and just letting the corner of the brush really touch the paper. That gives me that rough edge in order to give a nice texture in there. And some of the whites are very interesting. I'm going to leave that alone. Okay. All right. So that's the only tree that I'm going to have with color. The rest are all going to be just silhouettes, lights and darks. That little tree there, that tree there is my focal point. So the focal point gets all the attention, gets all the color. The rest are just sizes and shapes and so forth. Okay. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the smaller brush. I'm going to go back in with some, I'm going to mix a little more green into this purple blue mix over here. Now I'm going to go back in here now. I'm going to start putting in a darker color over top. This is the third layer we've done, so this is basically only have to do about 3 layers of this if I do them right, so I don't have to go back in too much further. So now I'm making the colors a little bit more natural with the landscape. This will be more green, but leave that violet color popping through. It gives me a change of a variety of colors. I like that idea. And I'm going to leave some areas that are lighter, some areas that will get darker, to give the impression of a dark woods with light shining in there, and some areas are darker than others. And leave that violet color to show off. That's a pretty color. Leave that alone. And now, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to pull this one. And let me turn the paper. So I always work better at an angle rather than try to do up and down. I work better at an angle sometimes. And I'm going to try to clean up the edge of this shape here, using the side of the flat brush. And we'll turn around. So I'm shaping those limbs and edges with the corner of the brush, the side of the brush, okay. Now you can turn upside down, so I can work up here. So I can turn the painting all the way around, no matter, as long as I work on the edges. And I can, sometimes working upside down, I can see the shapes better. I can see the design better upside down. And that paint is still nice and wet, but now you can see the variety of colors I'm getting. With that purple mixed in with the with the blue, and now the violet and the blue mixed together gives me an interesting color. And really, I like to paint like this because it's more an impressionistic view, not realistic but impressionistic, just to get the impression of a deep woods with a dark background, looking way, way back into the deep woods, further and further. So I'm going to basically going to do 3 layers today, but I could do more. You can go back and do more layers on top of this. So this is a layering technique. It's negative painting, and you're painting around the objects. So I'm painting the dark values around the light objects. As I go further back into the background, the objects get darker, but so does the negative space around them. They get darker than the object, which makes them come forward. Okay, and then this one up here, let me finish this one off. A little darker, a little more color. Keep that purple in there. So I'm still staying with the same mix, but I'll make them make it a little bit darker. Okay. And this one here. Okay. Now again, I'm going to use a smaller brush next to that edge. And this is probably be the darkest part of the woods is right here. And go ahead and put in another tree in the background. As long as I paint around it, that makes another shape. So I'm painting around, negative painting around this area here brings out another shape of something in the background. In this case, it's a tree trunk with some light shining on it, or a little bit of light on it, but just enough to show that it's something there. And let me turn this, keep turning this around, I want to get a better angle. Okay, so let me get an angle here. And I don't want all these edges to look perfect, so I'm going to leave a little rough edges along here. Make it look more like a tree. A tree with rough bark on it. Okay. And now I'm going to pick up more of that blue and a little more green. So I'm going to mix more green in with that blue. So we're looking at, right here in this section here, we're looking into the darkest part of the forest. And I can also add shadow patterns along here. Add a little more water to maybe lighten it up just a little bit. Negative painting. I'm painting around shapes. I start out with a drawing, a sketch, and then now I'm adding paint to that sketch. And I'm also leaving extra areas around that I think will be interesting shapes also. And the tighter I get, the smaller my brush stroke is. Using the corner of the brush. And the flat brush does a good job because you can get in there real tight with the edge of the brush, corner of the brush. Don't necessarily have to use a small brush. Use a big brush. Use as big a brush as you can handle. But get used to working with bigger brushes. They carry a lot more paint, and they paint a lot better. They cover an area much better than small brushes. Little baby brush strokes don't make interesting shapes sometimes. Try to do a minimum number of brush strokes as possible. And get that paint down, and let it dry. Okay. And this last section over here is green, so I'm going to add a little bit more, maybe I'll add a little bit of brown in there. I want to kind of dull that green down, so the complementary color to green is red, so I'm going to pick up a little burnt sienna which has red in it, and that will dull that green down so that it doesn't look so green. So I'm going to bring, there, it looks a little more subtle. And that brown is also next to the brown tree, so those colors kind of match together very nicely. So a little brown mixed in with that green doesn't hurt. And a little negative painting around these limbs. Okay. And we're almost done over here. And I'll just finish off a little. I've got some shadow patterns I want to put in, and then a little more in the foreground. So I've got a plan. A little more brown. There's some more brown over here. As long as the paint is wet, you can always put color in. For example, here I can go ahead and dab in some brown. It may look like some leaves back there, or whatever, some shape. Little darks and lights. And you know, some of these areas you take your time. You don't rush too much around, especially these tight areas. You want to make sure you got enough time in there. Take your time, make a nice clean shape. Gonna leave some light areas for reflections of the light going into the backwoods. There's some reflections going back there. Some lighter branches, some closer branches. All right, this last part here. Just to finish it off. Don't want to leave on the edge of the painting. You don't want too much interest, so you want to kind of put that in. But I will leave some shapes there showing, just to give a little interest, even on the edge. Not too much distraction, but maybe a little. We can always color back in if we find something that's too much. Okay, boy, there you are. That's a dark woods, and I think what I'll do, I'm going to adjust some colors again over here. I'm going to put a little bit more green over here. That purple, that violet really came through strong, so I'm going to tone that down with a little bit of green. Remember, violet has red in it, so if I put green on top of it, it's going to tone that down. So remember how to use complementary colors to neutralize or tone down a color. Use the complementary color to do that. Okay, and maybe up here I put a little green up in this area. Okay, all right. I think that's dark enough. It's dark enough. I got a variety. You can still see purple, and you can still see a darker blue in the center, and then the darker green. So it gives you a nice flow of color. Not the same color, but a different variety of color across the landscape. Okay. I'll let that dry a little bit because I want to put a shadow across there, but I don't want to mess up the wet paint, so I'll leave that. So I can work a little bit more on the foreground. What I will do here is take some. I think I'll take a spray bottle. Now this is a palette in a bottle dot sprayer with cobalt blue in it, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hold a piece of spare paper here to mask off I'm going to put some marks here on the ground. Okay. And also have not too much. I got a little burnt sienna. I got some burnt sienna here in the spray bottle. Palette in the bottle, dot spray. This has got burnt sienna. The spray bottles are on my website, everettswatercolors.com. On my supply page, I have the spray bottles. Okay, a little bit extra going here. So there could be some little rocks and stones on the ground. Gives a little rough pattern there, which is good. Okay. Now I think what I can do is I can go ahead and put in Now I'm going to do some fine. I'll take the smaller brush now. And what I mean by smaller brush, I'm going to take the medium round brush, and I'm going to take some of this green color here. Now I'm going to start separating some of these branches, because some of these branches are still. What I can do here. I think I'll take the medium brush again. I'm going to take this medium brush and let me test out the color. A little test sheet here. That's good. Okay. Test out the color. And I'm going to, this tree here, I'm going to make a little, push it back a little bit. So I'm going to put some color on top of that. So what that does, now that moves that tree back just by putting color on top of that lighter area. And then these branches, which belong to that tree, that puts them behind this other tree. Okay, so this tree here is lighter, it's forward. So this other tree I'm pushing back by putting the color on top. Okay, so that pushed that. So just by putting a little color on top of that, push that branch behind. And I think over here, I'm going to take that same color. I got green over here. I'm going to knock this down a little bit. It's a little bit too bright over here. So I'm just going to, again, you can still see it. I'm just going to put a little glaze. A glaze is a light application of paint, just a very thin layer of paint over top, which is like a glaze that will knock that color down. And while I was painting this tree, I forgot about the branches, and so I'll put those in right now too. But now this painting is starting to come alive. I think things are starting to come to a point here. This tree here has this branch, so I'm going to put that brown here, indicate that that's the forward color I want. And that's a little bright, so what I'll do is gotta be careful because I don't want to lift up anything else there. So what I'll do is take the brush, take out all the paint, and go in and do just a little scrubbing. So I took the water out of this brush, made it a dry brush, and I'm just going to scrub that color. And what that does, that spreads it out, and it'll also reduce the intensity of that. I didn't want it that bright. I want it to be brown, but not so brown that it's overtaken everything else. Okay. And then if I had a problem with that, what I could do is take that green color, just kind of wipe it out a little bit, just kind of knock it down. Yeah. Okay. All right. I want that brown there to match the brown on the tree because it belongs there. Okay. And over here on this one, I think I'll spray across there. That'll take care of that. What I'll do is spray across the top. So what I'll do, now this is the magic of these spray bottles. You can do all kinds of things with these spray bottles. Let me use this piece of paper here so it's easier. This dot sprayer, which is cobalt, and if I have a fine mist sprayer with a black top, which is fine mist, I can take that off and take off the white top of the dot sprayer and interchange that top. I can now use that same color now in a fine mist. And what I'll do here is I want to spray across the top here a little bit. Let me pick that up here. Now sometimes when you push the dot sprayer, if it sticks a little bit, that's because the paint has been in there and dried slightly. Then what you do is just pull it up with your other hand, kind of use like a two-hand operation. What I'm doing is I'm knocking down some of that color across the top. Okay. and then I can take the brush and while it's still wet I can lift up. If there's a big dot somewhere you don't want, like I have here, I can lift that out. Okay, so I sprayed across the top there to knock down that color. Let me play a little bit more. Okay, there it is. All right, and try a little bit. What I think I'll do is let me mix up a little gray. Use the Quinacridone mixed in with a little bit of brown, and that will give me a gray color. You can make gray colors with just about any color by adding a complementary value to it. I want a little bit bluer than that, a little bit bluer. I'm mixing up a gray with a little bit of blue to it, a little bit of touch of blue. That's better. Okay, so I've got a blue here, just mixed in, and I'm going to take that blue. That's good. Take that blue, and I'm going to put that. We're going to have some shadow. The light's coming in from this direction here. Let's say it's coming from the right top down this way. And I'm going to put a couple shadows across here. And maybe back in here, just showing that there's maybe some light coming through, indicating that. And maybe even across here I'll have a couple. I'll pick up a little green here now, a little green and brown. That's not what I want. I'll go back to blue. Go back to blue. Okay. Go back to blue. Maybe I'll put across. Maybe I'll put a couple of shadows here across that area. Okay. Now in the foreground, I'm going to add a big shadow here. I'm going to put a shadow across the foreground here. So it's a gray, it's a brown ground. So I'm going to make a brown shadow to match the ground. This will be darker. So I'll take a little bit of that burnt sienna mixed in with a little bit of blue. And that'll give me a dark mix I want. Now that shadow is going to be up all the way up this tree. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and paint in the shadow on this tree. This is the shadow side. On the left, this is the shadow side coming down. And I don't go halfway. I either go 1/3 or 2/3. This way I'll just leave 1/3. I'll cover 1/3 in shadow as I come down here. Now I'll go across the ground. The light's coming this way, so I'm going to build a shadow out from here. The shadow's darker up against the tree, and it gets lighter as I go out. Excuse me. I use some of that color that's on the ground already. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, my final thing I do is I want to take a look at this under the mat and see if there's anything I want to do extra. So I'll take a mat board, which I have right here, and let's bring it up on top so I can see it. I'm going to take a mat board and put across the top of this. And step back a little bit. And I think the only touch I need to do is right here across the bottom here along the. This is really the only horizon line is just right here. It's the only thing I can see. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of darker color. And maybe I'll take that up. If you put something down, you don't like it, just wipe it away. Don't even think about it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a spray bottle on here. I'm going to put that piece of paper down, and I'm going to take the dot sprayer. So I'll change tops again. I'll put take the fine mist off, put the dot sprayer back on. Now I have a dot spray. Okay, yeah, that matches this area over here because I didn't want to have straight lines here and no straight lines over here. So by putting the dots here and then continuing the dots over there, I think it's a little more homogeneous, a little more continuity of both sides of the painting. Okay, now we'll go back and put the mat on. And then step back and take a look at it. Also, some of these dots, I can take this the dot sprayer with water in it, and I can go back and hit those areas that still got wet, and I can spread some of those dots out, kind of make them a little less dotty, but a little more irregular, and that's what I want, a little irregular shapes on the ground. Okay. I think that's what I was looking for. Okay, I think the light. I took that bright light off him. It may even see better now on the camera. It darkens it up a little bit. So there. That's the deep woods, and. With this brown tree in the foreground and this lighter tree over here that kind of sets up the stage with another lighter tree, and then all the other trees are pushed back in the background by putting layers of different colors on top, and then adding some textures. So I think that completes that. I'm going to come back on camera up here on the main. So that concludes my painting today of what I call deep woods. And the technique I used was negative painting. And by painting layers of color, one on top of the other, and then reserving the lighter area to bring some of those objects forward, it gives a sense of depth. And you could go even further. You can go back and add more darks on top of those darks, and go a little deeper and deeper as far as adding value. I want to keep it down to 3 levels today. I have gone as far as 5 or 6 layers, but not necessary to show you the technique and not necessary to show you the demonstration. The spray bottles really come in handy because I did a fine mist sprayer at the top to add some texture up the top and tone down some areas, and then I put the spray bottle down in the foreground on the ground, again to give me some texture and also to add more color and to bring the painting together. And the shadow patterns I think are very important. It gives a little more believability that there's light coming through the trees, and so it makes it more interesting shape and more interesting story to tell. So I had a lot of fun today doing that painting. Negative painting is a simple process as long as you have a nice drawing and a good plan, and then go from there. It's a good way, a fast way to do a painting, and it's very effective. and it makes a nice gift, or it makes a nice presentation to show someone of your painting techniques. Well, I hope everybody's safe today. Came back in here in the studio and did a live program, and I hope you're enjoying watching this. I'll be back again on Thursday, and I'm going to have some fun. We're going to do some watercolor stuff, but I'm going to do a different style, a different way of painting. You'd be surprised at what I come up with. But I'm going to have another little fun with watercolors on Thursday at 2 o'clock. And then on Saturday, we're going to have some fun with Easter. I'm going to do a little Easter program, and we're going to play with some things that both the children can play with and some adults can also play with. Two different ways of painting, but I think we're going to have some fun together. A good way to spend some time and kind of relax and maybe take your mind off what you're going through at the present time. So you all take care and stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.